So let's talk about how emotion governs in the way that you make decisions. Let's pick something and let's go into it. Guys, welcome to another evening at the Future. Today I'm joined by Shannon Gabor, like Shannon Gabor, to help you guys remember as a mnemonic. She's the founder, and what other titles do you have?
Founder's
good.
CEO,
I like adding
founder.
slashes. Founder, CEO, Chief Creative Officer, Amazing Human Being, Culture Evangelist of Clever Creative. So let's talk about how emotion governs in the way that you make decisions. Let's pick something and let's go into it.
We could start with clients, maybe.
Okay.
So I think my philosophy in general, just clients, is it's a relationship, not just a transaction. So for me, when I always start any sort of, I'm at the helm of the new business at my agency right now. So I've worn many hats over the years, but right now I sit within the new business development area. And so for me, I've always activated running Clever, not chasing the financial part of it, but rather chasing kind of the passion behind why I'm doing it. Mm-hmm. And I think that translates very strongly to how I approach client relationships and the new business development piece that I handle. Mm-hmm. And it's always been more about, people call, and even to this day, they're like, hey, what are your budgets, or is your budget, X, Y, and Z? And I never really start the conversations with any clients or any brands on that. I always start with, what are you looking to achieve? What does success look like? Because I think you can negate a conversation, or you can automatically turn away somebody if you automatically start with a dollar amount rather than what does that experience look like? Because it could be really rewarding in other ways.
So when do you bring up the issue of budget? Now I know what success looks like, I understand your goals and what it is that you're trying to achieve. In which part of your discussion, how deep into it do we get into the budget?
Yeah, it's definitely, I think it becomes like a fit thing. So I think that in anything, we're in an incredible city with so much talent. There are so many agencies who do exactly what Clever does. I think at the end of the day, it really has to translate into how does the client fit within the culture of Clever. And I think that oftentimes a lot of agencies look at it like, again, transactionally, we have a creative pipeline, and we have 80% of our revenue figured out for Q1. We need to fill that 20% with X amount of revenue to get us to that goal. And that's one way to look at it. Or another way to look at it is, interesting startup comes through our doors. This is recent. Didn't have a budget. We were able to find that we felt that the product that they had was really stellar. I believed in the founder. She's also female owned and operated. And we made a decision as a company that we would take on that work and we would postpone payment. And now their sales have dramatically changed. She came through our doors today, and now there's probably another 200% of that work coming through in the next, hopefully, 6 to 12 weeks. So again, there's a little risk involved when I think you're not looking at it purely as a transaction. But I think that's also kind of just the ethos of who we are at Clever.
And I always find that in the friction of a conversation, some truths come out. It's like that grinding, and then there's gold in the dust that's left there. So a lot of people look at my style of talking as confrontational. It's really not. It's just, I want to push us to the edge to kind of find out like what my truth is. Okay. So the assumption here is, if we're paying attention, that if you're logical and you're running a company, then you're all about the transaction. And I don't look at it like that. Now, I do see myself as a predominantly logical person. I was not born into the world that way. I was born into the world as super hyper emotional, insecure, introvert. And somewhere in my growing up, I didn't like that person. And I've talked to my therapist about this. I metaphorically killed that person and emerged was the Vulcan robot, which is the person I am today, realizing emotion has made me become super vulnerable, and it made me make decisions that weren't sound. And so I'm working in therapy now to try to get back to that person. But I don't look at the logical person as I'm looking at as a transaction. I have a different set of criteria, but I also look at it as a relationship. But not all relationships are created equal. So how do I, as a business owner and as as a leader, CEO, whatever, how do I help to make decisions that are in the long-term benefit of our company? I look at the relationship not as one way, but a two-way thing. It needs to be good for you, and it also needs to be good for us.
Totally.
And for us, I feel like as the captain of the ship, I got to do something so that at the end of the day, at the end of the year, everybody that wants a job with us still has one, and that we're helping them to grow emotionally, spiritually, and financially. And so if I extend myself to too many things that are about, this is for the good of humanity, I got to do this, somebody is paying that price. And it could be the hours worked unpaid, it could be overtime, it could be all those things. So I'm always looking at that as a whole and not as an either or. So the budget has to be a part of it. So the relationship, I would just add in, for me personally, budget is part of that conversation, most definitely.
And budget becomes a conversation. We're not doing free work at Clever. But for me, I feel like a lot of times the budget number to me is a turnoff. If I was to answer a phone call and I had an incredible brand and perhaps I wasn't as well known and huge, one person might say, okay, great, what's your budget? To me, I don't know if that feels like an invested partner from the get-go. That means that agency is looking for my check versus looking out for my brand. So for us at Clever, in all truth, the way that I approach it is just intrinsically who I am as a person. But as I approach budget and costs, it absolutely, typically, most of the time, goes from what they thought they wanted to spend because they now have a partner or a liaison that can talk to them about their brand versus just budget oriented. It typically converts to more work than they were expecting to spend anyway. And that's what I find most interesting, is the conversion of what they thought they needed when they walked through the door or they walked into the meeting tends to be an upsell of more services. But that upsell is come from kind of a connection point of understanding what it is they're trying to achieve and having that conversation versus starting off and saying, great, our identity packages start at X. That typically is going to make that decision right then and there versus involving the conversation to say, hey, well, what about you did this with your identity? What about if you did this? And I'm not saying give free ideas. We're not doing spec work left and right here. We're just having a conversation to excite them about what our brains can do. And once you kind of get your brains working in front of somebody, it's pretty magical how you see that room is willing to basically pay whatever you tell them they have to pay because they're seeing that happen in action. So we definitely, obviously, are mindful of budgeting costs, but it's not the first question, the first point of entry.
Right. Now, I would say that if the first question that comes out of your mouth is, what's your budget? You've already done it all wrong in my logic brain. It is totally all wrong. That's not how you do it. Okay, now, if you're getting a lot of calls where there's people lowballing you, bottom feeding, and that kind of stuff, that might be a positioning problem, a communication problem, and a marketing issue. So you're putting yourself out there where people don't understand your value, and you're casting a very wide net. So you're going to catch a lot of things that you don't want.
Oh, totally.
So that's,
and we
that's
say
an
no
issue
to a
there.
lot of work that doesn't align with us.
Right.
Absolutely.
And so what you're also saying is if you focus on the relationship, actually the budget can be much, much higher. So
Totally. Yeah.
all right. So far so good. I don't think you're serving yourself, the people that work for you, or your clients if you're not able to help the client figure out what the real problem is. And by getting too transactional too early, you're actually taking yourself into the transactional space, and you're going to become an order taker versus someone who's viewed as a trusted advisor or consultant. So a client that comes in to self-diagnose and prescribe a solution, that's when you're like, whoa, that might be true, but let's be sure. Let's find out. Right? So you come in thinking, I need a new X, and in truth, it's actually a different problem, and a more cost-effective solution actually might be the way to go. And then you're working against your own best interests, right? And this is where real relationships are built, when you're looking out for your client more than you are lining your pocket.